Welcome to Life Stories, where one rainy night, a single question from a stranger, need a ride, set off a chain of events that would test the limits of forgiveness, reshape a family, and challenge everything they thought they knew about love, trust, and second chances. What would you do if the only person who could save the one you love was someone you'd already pushed away? This isn't just a story about healing. This is about what happens when two broken lives collide in the middle of a storm and somehow create shelter for each other. Stay with us, because by the time the final scene fades, you might just find yourself believing that the most beautiful things are born not in perfect sunshine, but in the middle of the rain. Let's begin. Rain blurred the windshield. Cal Parker guided his rust-red pickup truck toward the curb, the wipers thumping like a tired heartbeat against the storm. The streets of Seattle had emptied, the kind of downpour that even umbrellas surrendered to, and Cal was already running late to pick up Ellie from aftercare. But then he saw her, a woman in navy scrubs, hunched beneath the flickering light of a bus stop, arms wrapped tightly around herself, not for warmth, but as if holding something broken inside. He almost kept driving. Almost. But something about her posture, defeated yet not collapsed, made him slow. The kind of stillness that came after the fall, when you're too proud to collapse but too exhausted to rise. He rolled down his window. "Need a ride?" he asked, expecting a polite no or a glance that screamed stranger danger. Instead, she looked at him. Really looked. Eyes rimmed with red but sharp with clarity. "Sure," she said, voice low. "Thanks." She smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain. Her name, he would later learn, was Riley Hart. At that moment, she was just a soaked stranger in his passenger seat. The heater barely worked, sputtering half-hearted warmth, and the radio played some folky cover of a Springsteen song. When his phone buzzed and he answered with a soft, "Hey, kiddo," Riley turned toward the window, pretending not to hear him explain the water cycle to his 9-year-old daughter in the most dad scientist way possible. But when he struggled, she leaned in gently. "Tell her the sun gives water molecules wings," she whispered, "until they're too heavy to fly." A pause, then a laugh from the speaker. "I get it now." And for the first time in weeks, Riley smiled. He dropped her off in front of a crumbling brick apartment building with no working intercom and the kind of hallway lighting that buzzed like it was about to die. She reached into her purse, clearly searching for money. "Don't worry about it," Cal said, waving her off. "Pay it forward." He didn't expect to see her again. 3 days later, Ellie fell on the playground and hit her head hard enough for a precautionary hospital visit. Cal's hands gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckle tight all the way to Seattle General, his heart thundering with worst-case scenarios. In the pediatric wing, a familiar voice called Ellie's name. Riley, now in clean scrubs and a ponytail, blinked in recognition. "The Rain Lady!" Ellie exclaimed before Cal could speak. Riley smiled, kneeling at Ellie's level. "That's me," she said softly. "Let's take a look at that bump." Watching her work, Cal noticed how the other nurses deferred to her, how even the attending physician checked her reaction before making decisions. Not just a nurse, he thought. Not just anything. 2 weeks later, they ran into her again, this time at the Pike Place Farmers Market. Riley was inspecting a bell pepper like it held secrets. Ellie waved first, and Riley came over, hesitant but smiling. "We make everything on this table ourselves," Ellie said proudly, gesturing to Cal's wooden cutting boards and her pinecone animals. Riley ran her fingers along the smooth grain of one particular board, the price tag catching her eye before she carefully set it back. "Cooking for one feels like a waste," she said quietly. "I usually end up eating cereal out of the box." That night, Cal carved a smaller version of the board she'd admired. He didn't know why. They began running into each other. At the community garden, where Riley drowned her tomato plants until Ellie scolded her with scientific authority. At school events. In the aisles of the neighborhood co-op. Cal found himself looking for her. She, despite her bruised caution, didn't seem to mind being found. And then the secret slipped. He was delivering a custom bookshelf to the pediatric wing, an anonymous donation, when he heard a heated voice down the corridor. Following it, He found Riley face to face with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, a hospital board badge clipped to his chest. "You ruined lives with your sanctimony," the man spat. "You knew what you were doing when you filed that report." Cal froze. He shouldn't have listened, but he did. She'd blown the whistle. On her own hospital, on pediatric care gone wrong, on cost-cutting measures that hurt kids. She'd lost her job, her fiancé, her savings. Her name, it seemed, had become synonymous with controversy in Boston. She hadn't told him any of it. Later, when he confronted her, more hurt than angry, she didn't flinch. "I protected children, Cal. I lost everything except my integrity." He wanted to believe her, but a deep voice inside whispered, "They always leave." Lauren did. Everyone does. He turned away before she could explain further, and then she was gone. 2 weeks later, Ellie's fever spiked past 103. The ER was packed. Cal was panicking. Ellie was barely conscious, lips cracked, eyes glassy. A nurse murmured something about a specialist brought in from Boston. And then Riley appeared, scrubbed in, efficient, calm. She took one look and barked orders like someone born to command. Meningitis was caught early. Ellie would be okay. Cal found her later, charting in the break room. "You turned down Boston," he said, gesturing to her local hospital badge. She didn't look up. "Success means nothing if I'm not where my heart is." He almost told her right then. About the medicine cabinet he and Ellie had built. About the drawing Ellie made of the three of them under the same roof. About the aching wrongness of pushing Riley away. But he didn't. Not yet. Do you think some people are worth risking your heart again for, even after it's been broken? What would you have done in Cal's place? Trusted her truth or walked away from the uncertainty? In a city full of ghosts, Cal was about to learn that the hardest person to forgive might just be himself. The medicine cabinet sat in the corner of Cal's workshop, untouched since the day he and Ellie finished it. Cherry wood, smoothed to a velvet sheen, with maple inlay forming a quiet, elegant caduceus across its face. Inside, compartments labeled for gauze, ointments, fever meds, thoughtfully designed by Ellie, who insisted Nurse Riley would like it organized. The note still rested inside. Healers need healing too. But Cal hadn't found the courage to deliver it. Instead, he poured himself into commissions, sanding until his palms burned and ignoring the ache behind his ribs. The workshop filled with the scent of cedar and avoidance. Ellie's sketchbook sat on the table, flipped to a drawing of 3 figures in a garden, Cal with his tool belt, Ellie with pigtails, and Riley kneeling beside a flower bed. Across the top, in her looping handwriting, "My family." He hadn't shown it to Riley, not after how things ended, not after the silence between them grew heavy enough to feel like failure. But then came the invitation. Seattle General was hosting a spring benefit, an open-air garden dinner to raise funds for pediatric care. Ellie's class had been invited to perform a small choral piece. Cal planned to drop her off and wait outside in the truck. That was the plan, until Ellie begged him to come in to see her sing, to meet the other parents. He'd never been good in crowds, not since Lauren left and social gatherings became reminders of what he didn't have. He stood at the back of the venue, in work boots still dusted with sawdust, fidgeting with the collar of a button-down shirt he hadn't worn since the last parent-teacher conference. The garden sparkled with strings of warm lights, the air fragrant with lilacs and city spring. Ellie stood on stage in the second row, singing with surprising confidence. When the music ended and applause erupted, Cal felt it again. Again, that tug of pride laced with loneliness. His daughter was growing up, becoming her own person, and he was still standing in the shadows, scared of connection. Then he saw her. Riley stood near the refreshment table, talking to a group of doctors, her white dress fluttering slightly in the breeze. She was laughing, but not in the easy, open way he remembered. It was practiced, restrained, and next to her stood a man Cal had never seen before, but instantly disliked. Tall, expensively dressed, polished in the way that smelled like ambition. He touched Riley's elbow too familiarly, leaned in too close. Cal told himself it wasn't his business, but his hands clenched all the same. Later, when Ellie tugged him through the crowd toward Riley, he resisted. "She's busy," he said. But Ellie was 9 and fearless. "We made her something," she announced. dragging him forward with all the stubborn love of a child who still believed everything broken could be fixed. Riley's eyes widened when she saw them, but her smile faltered when the man beside her looked between them and asked, "Friends of yours?" She hesitated. Cal caught it. That pause. That flicker of calculation. "This is Ellie," she said eventually. "And Cal. Just Cal." The man extended a hand. "Dr. Warren King, I've just been invited to head the new pediatric ethics board here." He said it like an announcement, not an introduction. Cal didn't shake his hand. Later, when Riley pulled away from the group to speak with them privately, her first words weren't what he expected. "I didn't know you'd be here." There was surprise in her voice, and maybe something else. Hope? Regret? "I didn't know you were back with people like him," Cal said, eyes narrowing. "I'm not with anyone," she replied, tiredness creeping into her tone. "He's part of the board trying to rebuild the same system that destroyed me. They want my name, not my voice, and I haven't decided what I'm going to give them." "But you're here," Cal said, voice tight, "wearing the dress, drinking the wine, playing their game." She looked at him then. Really looked. "Do you think I want this? That I'm chasing the approval of men like Warren King? I came tonight because I promised a little girl with a brain tumor I'd show up and speak for her, not to impress anyone." She took a breath. "You think I gave up who I am? I didn't. I just stopped trying to prove it to people who never cared." Cal's throat burned with unsaid words. "You didn't tell me the truth. Not all of it. About Boston. About why you stayed. About what you wanted from me." Riley stepped back. "And you didn't ask." Her voice was quiet, but sharp. "You just assumed I'd leave. Like she did. Like everyone." Ellie appeared then, holding the medicine cabinet in her arms. She'd retrieved it from the truck without asking. "We made this," she told Riley. "Dad carved the wood. I helped with the drawers. It's for you." Riley took it carefully, her fingers running over the smooth surface, stopping at the note inside. She blinked hard. "Thank you," she said softly, not looking at either of them. She turned, started to walk away, but then paused. "You're right, Cal," she said over her shoulder. "Some people do leave, but others get pushed away." That night, after Ellie had gone to bed, Cal stood alone in his workshop, surrounded by unfinished pieces. The cabinet Riley now held had been the first thing he'd made with his heart open, and now it was gone, given, maybe forever. What happens when you finally offer someone a piece of your heart, and it's too late to take it back? And just as Cal tries to move forward, a single phone call threatens to shatter what little hope he's rebuilt, forcing him to decide whether to fight for something real or let it slip away once more. Cal's phone rang in the silence of the workshop, its harsh buzz shattering the quiet that had settled around him like dust. His first instinct was to ignore it. Another call he couldn't bear to take, but when he saw the name on the screen, his heart dropped. It was the hospital. His hand shook as he answered. "Mr. Parker?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "We have your daughter Ellie in the emergency room. She's having a severe allergic reaction, and we need you here now." The words hit him like a blow, sharp and relentless. His mind spun, but all he could hear was the pounding of his own heartbeat as he grabbed his keys, storming out of the workshop, leaving behind the half-finished projects, the dust, the sawdust that clung to everything like old memories. He drove faster than he ever had in his life, but every red light, every pedestrian crossing felt like an eternity. His thoughts spiraled. Could it be the food from the market, the pollen from the garden? What if it was something more, something he couldn't control? Ellie, his daughter. She was all he had left. And he was terrified of losing her, of being too late, of failing her the way he had failed everyone else. When he burst into the emergency room, his eyes locked onto her, pale, swollen, eyes closed, a thin line of drool trailing down her cheek. He rushed to her side, gripping her small hand, his heart pounding in his chest like it would burst. The doctors were already working, their voices calm but urgent. Riley was there too, standing in the corner of the room, eyes focused, but not on him. She wasn't there for him. She was there for Ellie, for the child who had trusted her when Cal hadn't. "Cal," Riley said quietly, approaching him. Her voice was steady, almost mechanical, but the way her eyes softened when they met his told a different story. "She's in good hands. We're going to stabilize her. Just stay with her." "I'm here," Cal whispered, swallowing the lump in his throat. He didn't know what else to say. He wanted to yell at her, demand answers, accuse her of abandoning them. But all the words that had built up over the past weeks, months, stuck in his throat, unspoken, just as they always had been. As the doctors worked, Riley stepped closer, her fingers brushing against his. The touch was brief, but it carried an ocean of meaning between them. Neither spoke. Neither had to. An hour later, Ellie was stabilized, and the air in the room felt lighter. Cal watched Riley, her professional demeanor slipping as she checked Ellie's vitals. For the first time, he saw the woman behind the nurse, the woman who had given up her career, her home, everything she knew to stand for something she believed in. The woman who had tried to walk away from him, from everything that had ever meant anything. When the room cleared and Ellie was asleep, the two of them stood there, alone, together in the sterile quiet of the hospital room. Cal didn't know how to bridge the gap between them. He wasn't even sure where to begin. "You saved her," he said, voice hoarse. "Thank you." Riley didn't respond immediately. She just stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes distant. And then, in a voice that trembled with something deeper than just fatigue, she said, "I didn't do it for you, Cal. I did it because she needed me. And maybe I needed to know I could still help someone." Cal's chest tightened. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," she whispered. "You don't have to. Not now." They stood in the silence, broken only by the soft beep of the machines monitoring Ellie's heart rate. Riley stepped closer, her presence warm, not invasive. She placed her hand on Cal's shoulder, a simple gesture, but it felt like a weight lifting off his chest. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. The guilt, the fear that had always clouded his world, started to recede, just a little. Ellie woke up a few hours later, groggy and disoriented, but when her eyes found Cal, she smiled weakly, reaching out for his hand. The relief that flooded him was overwhelming. His daughter was safe. They were safe. As he sat there beside her, Riley stepped back, giving them space. Before she left, she looked back at Cal, her expression unreadable. "I'll check in later. She's going to be okay, and so are you." But Cal wasn't sure. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. Not of what the future held or of what would happen between him and Riley. There was so much to say, so much to rebuild, but in that moment, all he could do was hold Ellie's hand and breathe. The next day, when they were finally allowed to leave, Cal stood in the hallway of the hospital, looking at Riley. He wanted to thank her again, but the words felt inadequate. Instead, he just nodded, a silent acknowledgement of everything she had done. Riley smiled, but it was bittersweet. "You don't need to thank me, Cal," she said softly. Just don't push people away when they're trying to be there for you." The words hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't just a reminder of what he had done to her. It was a reminder of what he had done to himself. He had been so scared of losing, of being left behind, that he'd built walls so high he couldn't even see the people who cared. He watched her walk away, and for the first time, he didn't feel that old fear rising in his chest. For the first time, he understood what it meant to let someone in. It wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who stayed, even when life wasn't perfect, and maybe, just maybe, he wasn't too late. Have you ever held on to fear so tightly that it kept you from seeing what was right in front of you? What does it take for someone to finally let go and trust again? 100 if you were moved by this story. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to share this with your friends. Thank you for watching Life Stories.